This is the research project for History 512 at Liberty University Graduate School Department of History. We have traveled to Boston, Massachusetts to the famous historic frigate USS Constitution. Welcome to Boston, Massachusetts. Behind me is the famous USS Constitution. We are located in the harbor, and I thought a beautiful sight here at sunset. Hi, welcome to the Freedom Tower here at Liberty University, and we are on the outside observation deck with a beautiful view of our mountains and campus behind me. We are located in Lynchburg, Virginia. Now, we left off in Boston, Massachusetts at the Navy Yard, but because of security regulations, video and photography is limited on the base. So we are decided to finish this video here at campus with a wonderful view. So during the pre and post American Revolution era, Great Britain's naval forces numbered in the thousands, whereas the United States Navy naval forces only had a small number of ships. Most of these ships were merchant ships. During this time period of 1775, there were 3 million people living in the United States, all of whom were living in the 13 colonies, as the western part of the United States was a vast wilderness. An interesting fact of this time period were most of the ships were wooden ships, and most of these wooden ships were made of large pine. Now, large pine was mainly found in New England in the United States. Now, the Royal Navy also relied on this large pine coming from New England. Thus, with the outbreak of the American Revolutionary War, this supply of large pine came to a halt. On October 13, 1775, the United States Congress passed a law creating the Continental Navy of the United States. Now, one needs to remember this is different than our current Navy, as our current Navy is the Department of the Navy, which would later be created. With the Navy, some ships were built, but a vast majority of these ships were confiscated from merchant shipping. The first ships of the United States Continental Navy was the Alfred, which is in honor of Alfred the Great, who was the King of Wessex, and another ship that was built was the Raleigh, which was named after Sir Walter Raleigh. John Barry was the first captain of the United States Continental Navy and the first to command a United States naval ship. He is considered to be the father of the American Navy. He was also responsible for the capture of the USS Lexington in 1776. In 1796, after the American Revolution War had ended, the United States could not afford to maintain a navy any longer, and thus disbanded its navy. Pre-American Revolutionary War, the ships were protected, merchant vessels were protected by the Royal Navy. Thus, pirates did not attack these ships. However, after and during the American Revolutionary War, this protection stopped, and pirateers started to attack these ships of the United States, merchant ships, in vast large numbers, thus creating a large problem. Now, because of these ships that were being attacked, these merchant United States ships, Congress reacted by ordering the building of 6 frigates. These ships were the United States, the President, the Chesapeake, the Constitution, and the Constellation. Shipyards were created all across the United States. Some of these were the Philadelphia Navy Shipyard, the Washington Navy Yard, the Boston Navy Shipyard, and the New York Navy Yard. Remember, we were actually at the Boston Navy Shipyard, which is now called the Charleston Navy Yard. These ships were named by George Washington. At the time of their naming, George Washington did not feel a name was important, and he merely just picked the first names that came to mind. It would not be for almost 100 years that ships would be then named by the Secretary of the Navy. The USS Constellation was the first ship launched, and it was the first ship of the United States to sink a foreign enemy's ship. It was not until 1798 where the United States Congress created the Navy Department. This would be signed into law by President John Adams. On this same year, the United States Marine Corps was also established as well. This was why these first 6 ships, frigates, are considered the first ships of the United States Navy. The USS Constitution was built from 1794 to 1797. This 3-mast heavy frigate was built in Charlestown Navy Yard in Boston, Massachusetts, where we were just at. The USS Constitution never had a foreign enemy set foot on her decks except for prisoners. In 1881, the ship was determined to be not fit to sail. The ship then sat in dry dock in New Hampshire. In 1920, the Secretary of the Navy wanted to tow the ship out to sea and use it for practice and sink it. However, citizens were very unhappy with this and protested this action. Therefore, a fundraiser started to help protect the ship, and the ship was refurbished. The ship then went from port to port on display for the nation to see. The ship was nicknamed Old Ironsides because as during the War of 1812, a witness saw iron balls bounce off this wooden ship's hull as if the ship was made of iron. Hence why the nickname for the USS Constitution became Old Ironsides. Some additional facts on the ship quickly here. Pope Pius IX visited the ship and gave a benediction on board the ship's deck. This was the first time a pope set foot on a United States ship and also on a United States territory in a sense. During the American Revolution, the United States Continental Navy played a major part in the war. Even while Great Britain's naval forces outnumbered the United States naval forces, the United States Navy still played a major role in the final outcome of the war. Historians agree, if not for the Continental Navy and also for the French naval forces, the American Revolution would have been lost. Therefore, naval forces have provided invaluable asset for securing our nation's freedoms. A naval force would prove invaluable against pirates as they attacked merchant ships of the United States, and also a naval force would prove invaluable in wars against foreign powers. The United States, in every conflict that it has been a part of, the United States Navy has played a major role in every encounter. From the American Revolution to the War of 1812 to both world wars and even today's modern wars in the Middle East, the United States Navy has been there every step of the way and has played a major role in all of these events. Today, the United States Navy is one of the most important military branches of the United States, as it not only protects merchant shipping, but it also protects our seas and our freedom. But to fully understand this great organization, one must understand her past, and starting with the Revolutionary era. And what a better place to start in this era than with the creation of the USS Constitution. Another note on the USS Constitution: this ship is still a commissioned ship in the United States Navy. Every August, also, the USS Constitution has a week-long training for petty officers of teamwork and leadership abilities. My father, actually, Master Chief Tim Hickey, was one of the petty officers to go through this training evolutions on board this historic ship. The USS Constitution is docked in Boston, Massachusetts, and visitors are allowed to tour her decks. I traveled to Boston in this research and toured her decks, and I was very humbled what a great experience this was. I truly recommend, if anyone is ever in Boston, to stop and visit the ship. Thank you again, and remember, go Navy. I thank you for your time, and I hope you enjoyed this historic video.